As we know, most guides you're going to find expect you to be level 90 plus with top tier gear. Today, let's do the opposite of that and help new and returning players get started. Today we're going to do probably one of the easiest characters to beat normal with, the Trap Assassin, or more specifically, the Wake of Fire Assassin. Like most other non-sorceress fire builds, this character will generally want to respec in Nightmare at some point, over to a more appropriate late game skill set, once it has access to higher end gear at least. Starting out, most builds follow the philosophy of enough strength and dexterity for gear and the rest into vitality, ignoring energy. This is true all the way through Hell difficulty. This build is, for the most part, the same, though for new players, a few points in energy can be worthwhile for this character since it can be hard to recover mana outside of potions. Generally speaking though, for the course of the first acts, I would be working on getting strength up to at least 45 for the ideal gear you can use then, and possibly up to 60 by the end of Act 4 so you can equip plated belts for maximum belt size. In terms of the rest of your stats, this build has no need for dexterity, but you do want to make sure your life pool is enough for your own personal comfort. So vitality should be your primary investment outside of reaching these milestones. Starting in Act 3 though, you can start to invest into energy for your traps, since that is around the time they will become the majority of your damage output. And you'll have passed the most dangerous boss for new players, Duriel, so you'll have more breathing room life-wise. Obviously, after respecking in Nightmare, you'll want to avoid putting these points into energy after the respec, because then you just have been wasting your respec. In terms of skills, there's actually a few options for this build, but the core remains the same. Maximizing Wake of Fire as soon as possible and investing any spare points into Fireblast, or later on Wake of Inferno. In terms of other skills, Burst of Speed and Fade are exceptionally useful self-casts for 1 point. You can only have one of them active at a time though, basically letting you choose between speed or durability depending on which one you want to have active. On the more optional end, there are skills such as Cloak of Shadows, which will blind enemies within the radius, and Mind Blast, which can stun and convert enemies, while not necessary, can be nice if you have the mana to spare, or in the case of Cloak of Shadows, is if you're struggling with some ranged enemies. Chances are you'll reach a respec point before it becomes an issue, but this build can do fine with a single point in Death Sentry as well later on. Basically just for the corpse explosion it provides, but often you will be in Nightmare by the time this becomes a useful option, and you'll probably have respec by the time you'll actually want to be investing in this in any real large scope. One nice thing about that option though is that the points that you did invest in Fireblast early do give Death Sentry more uses. In terms of equipment, your biggest concerns are going to be plus skills, attack speed, and mana. The reason for that last one is that unfortunately traps are considered separate entities from the assassin, so will not restore mana per kill no matter how many tier runes you have, so we generally move away from that into maximum mana and mana recovery for new players. In Nightmare, it's easy enough to get an Insight polearm on your mercenary to handle this, but for normal, it will be a struggle. This is also why we go for 60 strength, since to get a 4-row belt in late normal, you'll need 60 strength for a plated belt, so you can carry as many mana potions as possible to keep these traps consistently being set up. Weapon-wise, this build is going to seem familiar for those who have watched the starter builds for the Fire Druid and Fire Sorceress, and that is Leaf. In this case though, you absolutely want it in specifically a short staff. This is because your trap laying speed is tied to your attack speed, and the short staff is your fastest weapon choice for Leaf in normal. This is made with the runes Tir and Ral in a 2-socket staff, and as with the Druid, you want to just use as basic of a 2-socket staff as possible, since plus skills just increase the repair costs on the off chance that you use it to actually attack. In the armor slot, we go with stealth again. While some uniques are better, getting 2-socket armor with Tal and Eth is going to be much more reliable. This gives you better movement speed, among other exceptionally useful stats. As usual, you want to put this in studded leather or in a breastplate, so you can maintain light armor options, so that you don't end up losing stamina unnecessarily or being slowed down just by the weight of the armor. In terms of the rest of your gear, as we said, you're going to want plus skills, mana, resist, etc. as your main goals. Life is always nice too, though beyond that, faster attack and movement speed can be useful as well, but not terribly crucial. Just use the best that you find while farming your other gear or casually going through normal. If you do get like an Orc Soul for a helmet, a lore can be a powerful option, but I wouldn't stress over farming specifically for it. While this build doesn't need to immediately respec as soon as it gets into Nightmare, it does need to consider it in the early to mid 40s, with most people either switching out to a kick and trap hybrid, using Death Sentry support and Dragon Talon and some Shadow Disciplines, or going heavy traps with a focus on lightning damage, just going down the left side of that tree. There are of course a wide variety of build options, but those two are the most often chosen ones because they're pretty much easy to play with even suboptimal gear.